Hey guys, today I'm going to teach you how to be an oppressive son of a bitch. Get it? It's because Warwick's a dog. Creativity isn't my strong suit.
Plot runs, they all run.
At level 1, you want to take Q. At the start of the game, grab Hunter's Machete and Rejuvenation Bead, then run to the enemy's buff near the top lane. Because most junglers want a fast leash, they'll be starting near bot lane where the AD carry and support can help them deal more damage, so very few junglers actually start topside unless absolutely necessary. Also, by invading at level 1, it reduces the chance you get invaded or killed by junglers that have strong early games like Lee Sin and Ezreal, since you put them behind in experience and because you cleared your topside by the time they invade. At level 2, you want to take W. You need this to clear camps fast, since the lower the target's health is, the more attack speed you get while attacking them. And since Machete grants an additional 25 on-hit damage and 15% bonus attack speed when you hit a jungle monster, you get a huge amount of attack speed and clear camps even faster. So because you hit level 2 after stealing the buff, it's not a good idea to immediately gank the top laner because you'll expose the fact that you stole the enemy jungler's buff, since there's no way you went from your bot side all the way to top lane in a matter of 15 seconds. If the enemy jungler sees this, they'll likely go from their bot side jungle to your bot side jungle and steal your buff. You might get a flash from ganking level 2 top lane, but it's not worth losing the huge advantage you secured for yourself from stealing the enemy's buff for a very unlikely first blood. Since you're already deep in the enemy jungle, you might as well take the nearby Gromp or Krugs to deny the maximum amount of experience to the enemy jungler. Once you're done, drop a ward nearby so you can see when the enemy jungler walks by, and start walking back to your own top side. Take your buff and look at which lanes are pushed out towards the enemy or easier targets for the enemy jungler to gank, because it'll be the lane they gank since they're behind and likely want to make up for the lost experience with a kill. At level 3, you want to take E. The damage reduction when E is activated pretty much lets you duel any jungler if you time the ability right. In most cases, you don't want to activate E the moment you start fighting, because if it's someone like Lee Sin, whose damage mostly comes from one ability, you'll want to hold your E until you're hit with the first part of the Q, so if he does complete his second Q, it'll minimize his damage output. You can also just flash out of the way to avoid these abilities, which does the same effect and gives you a major advantage in the 1v1. If it's a more consistent damage dealing jungler like J4 or Shyvana, don't reactivate your E early because the damage reduction ends with the fear and you won't be able to maximize the amount of damage you mitigate. Instead, try to time your fear to cancel the incoming auto attack that's in mid animation to deny them as much damage as possible. Isn't that right, Warwick?
Kill yourself.
For skill order, you want to max W to increase Warwick's ability to clear camps and gank or counter gank efficiently. In most cases, leveling your Q isn't the best since you don't need a damage increase to help clear camps faster and the cooldown doesn't decrease either. But that's not the main reason. If Warwick or any champion in general can't get to a fight or a gank attempt in a timely manner, the increased damage from maxing Q is pretty much pointless. The move speed from maxing W gives you an edge over other junglers since you can pick out any low health targets after a skirmish or make your way over to any ganks in progress. Even if the enemy isn't below half health, you can still activate Blood Hunt to get the move speed bonus, so basically a max W Warwick gank looks something like this.
Watch out, watch out, watch out, watch out!
If you're trying to gank, don't activate Blood Scent at max range or if they're already low health, because you're basically telling the enemy that
I came looking for booty.
activate it as you enter the commonly warded areas, because by then you've already been seen, so you might as well activate the free move speed. In fact, the only time you activate it at max range is if you're trying to scare off the enemy or create a blood hunt path so you can get to the fight faster. Speaking of ganks, when you Q through a target, take into account the angle of the Q and where you'll be after you Q through them. If the enemy is pushed up to your turret, you don't want to Q through them because the Q will put you closer to your tower and farther away from the enemies afterwards. Instead, wait until they've run past you, so when you Q through them, you put yourself in front of them and in range for another auto attack. Queuing through the target to maximize the number of auto attacks isn't the only thing you should look out for. You can better position yourself to AoE fear everyone in that fight. If the enemy bot laners are standing close to each other, you can charge your E when you get close, Q through one of them, and reactivate E to fear both of them. This can also be used during a team fight since enemies will likely be grouped up, and disrupting 4 people with your fear can easily turn a fight in your favor.
I can smell you.
I need an adult! I need an adult!
And finally, take into account the enemy's dash, crowd control, and displacement abilities before you Q. If they have such an ability, instead of Qing the moment you get into range, E and watch their reaction. If they aren't showing any signs of flashing or pushing you away, walk in front of them to fear them towards your allies, and slow them with a red buff empowered auto attacks to ensure they don't go anywhere anytime soon. Just pressing Q against displacement abilities like Vayne's Condemn or Blitz's Hook will also stop the displacement, and the Q can be used on anything. Here's a list of all the abilities you can cancel with the Q.
Hey, that's pretty good.
By 4 to 5 minutes, you should have close to 1050 gold from counter jungling and from gank. Immediately recall and get Tiamat because this item really helps Warwick access his attack speed bonus from his blood hunt. On jungle camps that have multiple monsters like raptors, the most proficient combo is auto attack Q, Tiamat, auto attack on the main raptor, and because the Tiamat passive applies on all 4 auto attacks, the baby raptors should be below 50% health, so you get attack speed for attacking them, and the AoE from Tiamat as you kill the baby raptors will also hurt the main raptor. In the early game, this is where jungle knowledge is crucial as Warwick, not just to keep track of what camps have spawned and you can steal, but also to estimate where the jungler will be. Because you invaded his buff early on, the jungler will likely be near bot lane at 4 minutes because he's behind in experience and wants to catch up by killing the camps that have just respawned. Non-buff camps respawn after 2.5 minutes, and since they first spawned at around 1 minute 30 seconds, that's where you get 4 minutes. Since he's near bot lane, you should preemptively ping your team to ward around that time so you can counter gank efficiently. Remember that buff you stole at 1 minute 30? Well, at 6:30, both buffs are respawning right about now, and you have to guess which buff the jungler wants more. For beginners, just gun for the buff that's closest to you, and if someone's already there, layer your Q and Smite on top of each other so you can increase the chance of stealing the camp. By consistently denying the enemy jungler buff throughout the early and mid game, you create a huge experience gap that makes it harder and harder for the jungler to be relevant, and easier for you to bully him and his team as he's trying to catch up. This is even easier once you hit 6 and lock your ultimate, since you can ult after them if they try to flash or dash away. That being said, if they have a flash or a dash, you should hold your ultimate until after they use it so you can chase after them. If you start with your ultimate and they manage to turn the fight around, you've got nothing that can be used to get away if your flash is down as well. Essentially, by ulting in a 1v1 or 1v2 with no flash, you're committing to the fight and accepting whether you live or die. It's also why you want to avoid a 1v2 when you're not ahead, because Warwick is not getting out easily without his flash or ultimate, even if he fears the enemy away. And I know it looks cool, but please don't jump at max range or jump with a locked screen because the relative position of the enemy champion changes on a locked screen as you move around. In most cases, it's better that you use Blood Hunt's move speed bonus to get close to the enemy so you can EQE then R at point blank range, lowering the chance of you missing to near 0. If the enemy has a flash or blink, there's not really a point in jumping from so far away when the chance of missing is so high. It's still a higher chance than TSM making out of groups though.
Yeah, I'm joking. Stop.
Remember how I said the max W? Well, because of this, you can sneak dragons in early game for your team as early as level 3 or 4. If you know the enemy jungler is near your top side, take the opportunity to secure the dragon. Once Warwick gets the dragon to below 50%, he'll start to shred the dragon and has enough sustain from his passive and Q, so you'll never die to dragon at this point. You can also do the same for Rift Herald if the enemy jungler is near bot side.
NANI?! お前はもう死んでいる。無駄。
By securing these objectives for your team, even if you don't gank for a minute or two, you remove the chance of the enemy getting that objective in the future, which will pay back tremendously in the late game if it's a fire or earth drake. In the mid game, teams aren't grouping as 5 yet, so it should be your job to pick off any stragglers if you're ahead. Go in on a lone target when you see 3 or 4 of the enemy on the map. If there's only 3 people on the map, take into consideration that you might end up fighting a 1v2, so only go in if you're positive in being able to pop the isolated target fast, or if you're confident in being able to 1v2. Similarly, if you plan on counter jungling at this point, keep in mind that laning phase is over, so don't go too deep when there are more than 3 people missing on the map and risk being caught out stealing camps, since it's possible the area is warded or enemies are nearby. If your team needs you for Dragon, Baron, or collapse on a 4v5, don't greedily chase the Vayne and possibly die in a 1v1. Be a useful Warwick and pick up objectives. With your E, ultimate, and tank stats, jump on any opportunities or misplays to wipe the enemy team and transition that success into objectives. For example, if there are outer turrets remaining, signal your team to take or siege those objectives. If someone shows up to defend, kill them. Again, you don't need to immediately ult the enemy because the crowd control from your EQ should be enough, and the ultimate can be used as an escape if the dive starts to go south.
None of you seem to understand. I'm not locked in here with you. You're locked in here with me!
In the late game, there will be even less opportunities for Warwick to pick off Stragglers, since it's around this time that everyone is grouping and looking for objectives or picks to end the game. On top of that, since most of your early game damage has fallen off because the enemy built some form of health, armor, magic resist, or move speed, it's likely Warwick gets melted by the enemy AD carry in a 1v1 now, especially if it's someone like Vayne. So instead of wandering around and trying to find someone to 1v1, if your team needs someone to peel, use your actives, E, and ultimate to peel. Good luck taking turrets while AD carries, since Warwick has no attack speed since Blood Hunt doesn't work on turrets. If your team doesn't need you to peel and needs you to lock down the carries, go lock them down so your carries can go wild. Randuin's, Righteous Glory, E, Ultimate, Titanic, PayPal, congratulations! You learned how to play Warwick jungle. Here are the runes, the items I normally buy, and some of the matchups he struggles with and the reasons why. For runes, Predator from Domination line isn't a bad choice since it helps increase your gank, chase, and escape potential. The active gives Warwick a move speed bonus similar to Warwick's Blood Hunt, without the Blood Hunt sound effects alerting the enemy. On top of that, because the move speed bonus from Predator doesn't disappear when you take damage like it does for Blood Hunt, Predator helps chase down target that have poke. And finally, because Warwick is very slow without a Blood Hunt target and the direction you run away in generally doesn't have a Blood Hunt target, it'll help escape assuming you can activate it. Press the attack from Precision line helps with ganking because your Q counts as one of the 3 stacks needed to trigger the bonus damage. With a simple E auto attack, Q auto attack, you not only trigger press the attack but also hold the enemy still with your fear so you and your laner can kill them. And with Warwick's innate sustain when he's low health from his passive, Last Stand isn't a bad option if you're planning to 1v1 the enemy jungler or counter gank frequently. Grab Press the Attack if you don't want to rely too much on your carries for damage in the early game, or grab Predator if your team just needs a consistent ganking jungler that does a decent amount of damage. For a secondary tree, you can pretty much choose anything you want or think is good for that specific match. You start with Hunter's Machete and Rejuvenation Bead because Warwick doesn't need the sustain from potions, and with Rejuvenation Bead, purchasing a Tiamat is even cheaper since it's 150 gold less. Always buy Tiamat the moment you have 1050 gold because the AoE damage not only helps bring the camp to below half health so you get more attack speed, but the Tiamat active also helps bring down the health. And after a successful gank, it's a great item to quickly shove the wave into the enemy tower. If you're using the domination tree, back with 1350 gold instead so you can buy boots and Tiamat at the same time. That way you can gank even without Blood Hunt since you have rocket boots. From here, I like to build full tank and leave Tiamat as Tiamat until I have enough resistance because the max health damage from a spammable Q and Tiamat should be enough to duel most champions in the lane or in the jungle. This is even more true if you got Press the Attack for damage since your damage output skyrockets in a 1v1. With more resistance, there's less chance of you dying in a gank or when you tower dive. And with Titanic Hydra's damage mostly scaling off health, there's not much point in completing the item so early when you only have 1800 to 2000 health, since your only other item will be Cinderhulk. And finally, here are some of the matchups that Warwick does poorly against and the general reasons why, and what you can do against them. Thank you so much for watching this video. This is the second of the videos I have planned for this series, and I appreciate any feedback about how I can make these videos better. These guys will be pretty much any champions that are very oppressive, and hopefully get most of you to at least gold 5 with enough practice. Feel free to drop any suggestions on the champions and I'll see if I'm any good at it.
Watch out, watch out, watch out, watch out!